Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. And thank you for joining us for our webinar, Integration Horror Stories.
Thank you, Sarah. I sure hope that we're going to get this all done in the time we have. I think I ended up being a little long-winded as I started to plan, but this is Betty Sackheim. I am the VP of Industry Strategy at TaskTop. I've got 30 years, I can't believe it, software development and delivery. As a software engineer, engineering manager, software consultant, product manager, and senior executive. With few exceptions, the companies I've worked for have really served the software development community. I love software. I love making the lives of software developers and deliverers just a little bit better. So that's why I'm here at TaskTop.
Great. And that zombie you see on the right is me. I'm Sarah Ryan. I'm our marketing automation, operations manager and marketing automation and task management software junkie. And I was also voted most likely to come up with a silly webinar theme, such as this one.
You sure were. Hopefully we will do this a little bit of justice. But, you know, a few minutes, let's just introduce TaskTop just very, very quickly. TaskTop really is all about helping our customers improve their software development and delivery capability by enabling the flow of information across practitioners and providing actionable data for greater visibility, governance, and traceability. And by this we mean across the entire life cycle. How do we do this? Well, we do this by providing integration products that are easy to configure and deploy to eliminate the barriers to creating this truly connected software life cycle. We have several products. They synchronize artifacts across these systems. They incorporate DevOps tools so that events in those tools create and modify artifacts in systems of record. And they collect activity data across the entire life cycle so that our customers can create cross-life cycle reports and dashboards. As you can also see on the slide, we're pretty proud to count among our customers and partners really some of the most demanding and visionary organizations in the world. So enough of our commercial announcement, on to the webinar.
So as you can see, it's a silly webinar, serious issues. At TaskTop, we're normally very serious. After all, we're all about helping organizations improve their software development and delivery capabilities, and that's normally very serious business for us and our customers. But as we were planning our serious webinars, which are usually very educational in nature, I realized that Halloween is coming up, and the subject of nightmares and zombies and vampires were kind of all I could think about. And so through those metaphors, we'll talk about a lack of integration, bad integration, and how those can literally give you nightmares, be a serious drain on your company's resources and your team's productivity and satisfaction. Right, Betty?
Yeah, thanks for the webinar theme. Really appreciate this. I'm usually pretty square, so trying to be funny is not really in my ballpark, but I'll give it a try. Back to the serious. Lots of horrible, nightmare-inducing things happen when you don't systematically integrate your software development and delivery tools. Now, I should mention the kind of tools we're talking about here. We're talking about tools that practitioners use to create and manage their work, like Agile planning tools, requirements management tools, test and defect management tools, service desk tools, as well as the DevOps tools like build tools, automated testing and validation tools, but code scanning tools and the like. Those kinds of tools are the ones we're talking about. Now, each of these tools help individual disciplines do their work, and in the process, they create and manage various development artifacts. But interestingly, folks in one discipline don't want to use the tools of another discipline. So, for example, developers may want to see their work in their Agile planning tools, but the defects that are actually being managed in the testing team's defect tools aren't in that tool. The tools don't share this information, and folks don't want to use each other's tools. So this happens, throughout the whole life cycle. BAs and product managers elicit and define requirements, not for themselves, but to share with their colleagues, like developers and testers. And testers create bug reports to share with their colleagues, and folks at the service desk create problem reports to share with their colleagues. So colleagues need to share these artifacts, but without a robust integration solution, they do it in wasteful, inefficient ways. So, okay, all right, enough of this. So back to our theme. There are horrors that happen when you decide you want to integrate your tools, but when you do that in a less than effective way.
Right. So just kind of to reiterate, during this webinar, we're going to talk about some of the nightmares and horror stories you might be having. That is before you become a TaskTop customer. Mm-hmm. So we'll be covering what happens when you don't have integrated software development and delivery tools, what happens when you try to integrate these systems yourself, and what happens when you try lightweight integration solutions. And since this webinar is about horror stories, we're not going to talk that much about TaskTop and what life looks like once you've adopted our products. That's a topic for another day. So today we're going to talk about these topics in a not-so-serious way, using zombies, vampires, skeletons, spider webs, and we may stretch the analogies a little bit too much.
A little bit.
And, you know, we may lose our train of thought as we make ourselves laugh. Hopefully you will also laugh, and not just at us. But it should be a fun time.
We'll give it a go.
Okay.
All right. First, we need to talk about this lack of integration ghost town. You know, what happens when your systems aren't integrated? Probably the most horrible aspect of having unintegrated systems is the impact that it has on some of the most important software improvement initiatives you have going on in your organization. So chances are your organization is involved in some sort of Agile, DevOps, or Lean transformation. You may have actually changed your tooling to help with these initiatives. For example, you may have purchased an Agile planning tool to help you operate in an Agile way. Excuse me. And that tool is ready and waiting to provide your development team that single backlog of work to be prioritized.
But let me guess, those work items don't actually originate in that system. They're maybe in another system, just waiting to get into your tools backlog?
That's right. That's absolutely right. Chances are good that requirements are coming from business analysts and their requirements management tool, and defects are coming from testers and their defect tracking tool, and there are even problem reports being created at the service desk. And without these artifacts flowing to the single backlog, some of the basic tenets of Scrum just kind of fall apart immediately. Now, with integration, they can all flow automatically onto the Agile planning tool, onto that single backlog, ready for the product owner to refine the backlog.
Okay, so that's Agile, and what about DevOps?
DevOps. So there's a lot of emphasis in the continuous delivery tool world about the flow of code through build, validation, and deployment. But what about flowing other information, like requirements, defects, problems, reports, all of that stuff? That's more in the spirit of DevOps, which really is meant to be a cultural shift towards greater collaboration across the entire life cycle. It's not just supposed to be about continuous integration, build, and release management. So DevOps automation is great, just as long as you extend some of that automation further toward the beginning of the life cycle to enable more of the original spirit of DevOps.
Right. And so what about Lean? That's more about a full life cycle view, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, Lean is more about talking about a value stream approach and looking at how value is built across the whole life cycle from project inception through deployed code. So how do you do that if your systems aren't integrated? And even more so, if you need traceability across this value stream, you're probably creating manual reports in a spreadsheet. You're manually making the connection from requirements to stories, tests, defects, codes, builds, validations, releases. If Lean is about anything, it's about reducing the amount of non-value-added work that people do. And I'd say that manually creating reports, particularly these traceability reports, when integrating your systems will help you create these reports automatically. It's definitely not in the spirit of Lean.
So I see what you mean. Unintegrated systems really reduce your effectiveness for your Agile, DevOps, and Lean transformations.
That's exactly right. You need to spend all that, let's say you're spending all this time and human capital trying to improve how you deliver software. It's actually being stymied by the fact that your tools don't play nicely together, turning your initiatives into a ghost town. So at the beginning, I mentioned that team members have to share information, and they do it in ways that are real time wasters. They send emails around about the work they've done. They sit in status meetings, which really have no useful value-added work that's happening there. It's all about telling people what you finished, what's in process, how long you took to work on a particular task. The horror of it all is that you've told someone, you've told the systems you work in. It's just that since your tools aren't integrated with your colleagues' tools, your colleagues have no access to that information. You have to share it in manual ways.
It's so frustrating. I think we've all been there, right? You have a task for something that's in your system. Let's say you're in Jira, and then you have a question relating to that task for someone who maybe doesn't use Jira. So you send them an email. And so then you're in your inbox, and you're updating Jira. And then you're going back and forth, and you could be collaborating right in the task, but it makes it kind of, you spend all that time putting the information in, updating Jira, but why do you even have the tools if you just spend all your time?
It's it, and of course it's not just Jira, it's all of the tools we have, and instead of doing the work we all love to do in the case of development, coding, testing, defining requirements, deploying software, instead of doing all that work that we love doing, we're having our time wasted by these manual processes.
So they are like productivity vampires, right? They're sucking the lifeblood, money, time, quality out of your projects.
That's exactly right.
Let's just take a second to appreciate this zombie. He's copying information from one system and pasting it into another.
Very enjoyable. We can enjoy that zombie just as long as we aren't that zombie, and I'm afraid we've all been that zombie. Because if you're not sharing information by sending emails or sitting in meetings, you're probably engaged in another horror. You're this swivel seat zombie taking information from your colleague's system and rekeying it into yours. For example, say you're a tester. You need the requirements that your colleagues have built, and like the zombie on the slide, you log into the requirements management system on the left, copy the requirements into your test management system on the right, and once you've got those requirements duplicated in test management tool, then you start to write your test plans and test cases to verify those requirements were correctly implemented. Now I'd say that's enough to turn anyone into a zombie. So, swivel seat zombies and productivity vampires aside, there's a real cost to not integrating your systems. It's the cost of that wasted time. Let's say for an organization of 1,200 developers, 300 testers. And our customers have conservatively said that we save every person every day between 4 and 5%, and that is kind of the low water bar. If that's the case, for an organization that size, they're actually wasting $10 million of time and effort that they could have gotten back by integrating their software.
So what do you think that they should be doing with all that time? You know, I personally would be preparing for the zombie apocalypse.
Yes, we could be preparing for the zombie apocalypse, or not. Maybe we take the most valuable feature off the backlog and deliver it.
I mean,
I think we should just plain avoid the zombie apocalypse. In fact, it's kind of like the opposite of the apocalypse. Our customers, and you've heard this, Sarah, our customers not only get more work done by removing this wasted work, but they're actually happier. I think this was one of the most amazing things I heard. One of our customers told us that employee engagement actually went up 22% as a result of using our software and removing all of that drudgery.
I love hearing stories like that.
Well, that's pretty exciting. Okay, but let's move on to the next set of horrors.
Okay. So here we have a skeleton who's being held together with duct tape. That's all the bones trying to be duct taped together.
Yes, and this little guy introduces our next topic. Let's say you've had it with losing all that productivity, and you've decided that you'd like to integrate your systems, and you're going to create these integrations yourself. After all, you have smart developers in your company, and it's just a coding problem. Well, I'd say it's kind of like putting duct tape on that skeleton, trying to cobble it all together and hold it together. Integration looks easy, but integrating systems that were never designed to work together really is no mean feat. I'd say you'd need a little bit more than duct tape. So let's talk about why doing this integration yourself is not such a great idea. I hear this all the time, and you're probably thinking to yourself, you can create these integrations yourself. After all, these systems all have APIs. How hard can it be? It's only a matter of learning how the systems work, and you can figure that out by studying their APIs. But here's the thing. APIs don't provide you everything you need to integrate one tool to another.
So at the risk of sounding foolish, I think a lot of people are under this misconception. I thought that was exactly what APIs do, right? They create a connection between two applications.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That is exactly what they do. But like all software, they're designed for a particular purpose. And generally, the APIs to these systems are designed to enable the vendor's tier architecture. They're not often designed to synchronize artifacts from their tool to another tool. vendors don't really design these APIs to integrate their tool to other vendors' tools, particularly not to their competitors' tools. So the APIs are one piece of the puzzle, but they certainly aren't the keys to the kingdom. Not by a long shot. So let's say you decide to integrate a couple of these systems together. You have developers managing their work in Jira and testers in QC, HPQC. So you want to integrate those two tools so that teams can synchronize our defects. And that works well, so you integrate Jira with a requirements management tool like Blueprint, so that when the BAs create requirements, they're synced to the Agile planning tool where the development team elaborates them into user stories. And you decide that problems not just reported by your testing team, but when customers report problems at the service desk, who may be using ServiceNow, these problems should automatically become defects in your defect management tool like HPQC. And let's say you're actually using two help desk tools, ServiceNow and Zendesk, and you'd like to have them work together. And you'd like to connect the front end of this value chain up to the rest of this from your PPM tool, say CA Clarity PPM, where your initiatives and business epics are defined, to your requirements management tool, say Blueprint. Once you get started getting the benefits of integration, you'll want to connect more colleagues and add more systems to your integration landscape. But this is unmanageable. The cost of building these one-off integrations like this is big enough, but consider how expensive it is to maintain this spider web. I love that analogy.
And you see that cute little spider on there, and just to kind of keep going with the theme, it's like he's laying these little eggs, and when they hatch, they'll cause more problems, right? That's where it becomes unmanageable.
That's exactly right. Each of these integrations is, in essence, its own little application. There's no central management for these applications. They're just running around loose like these baby spiders. and what adds to this is when the endpoints change, like when the vendor rolls out a new release. When that happens, there's a pretty good chance that the upgrade breaks the integration. So sometimes the APIs change or break, and when that happens, any of those point-to-point integrations that includes that endpoint needs to be fixed. And that's not even the worst part. All of these point-to-point integrations create demand on the endpoints, performance demand on the endpoints, that might actually create performance issues. This kind of point-to-point architecture can bring your systems to their needs because of all those API calls that slow down that application performance.
Right. We've heard stories from our customers about this. In one case, their homegrown integrations between the service desk tools and their Agile planning tool actually brought down the Agile planning tool because of the way it was designed. So, it tried to scan all the items, and apparently they did it in a very inefficient way. And the net result was kind of like this poor guy waiting for his Agile planning tool to load the user story that he wants to work on.
That's true. It can be very easy to create integrations that are real performance hogs. So let's do a little reality check on DIY integration. While integration seems like a small matter of programming, it's actually pretty tricky and very prone to failure. It's not simply a technical challenge. It requires in-depth knowledge of the tools, how they work individually, and how they should work together. To do this, you really need to learn the systems well enough to understand how they should work together. You have to identify and overcome the conflicts between them and among them. You'll run into all sorts of conflicts, and sadly the APIs don't provide all the answers. They don't even provide a lot of the questions. And to top it all off, creating the integration is just the first step. Testing and maintenance is difficult, it's expensive, and the endpoints change frequently. So no matter how much you estimate it's going to take, I pretty much guarantee in terms of time and resources, you'll underestimate that work. We've heard of many organizations that have tried several times, spending 1 to 2 years writing and testing 2 million lines of code, wasting time, money, and losing face, sadly. And Sarah, I don't think we want this to happen to our customers or people out there. They should come to us.
Right. So we've talked about the problems that that happen when your tools aren't integrated, and some issues that happen when organizations want to build them themselves, right? They haven't listened to Betty. And so maybe now you believe us that integration is hard enough that you don't want to do it yourself, but you figure, because it can't be that hard, you just want to buy a lightweight integration solution that could do the trick.
Yeah, that's right. At first blush, two integration tools might look pretty similar. And, they both have visual tools for mapping artifacts to each other, but the differences really appear as you start to implement the integrations. You'll run into use cases that are a bit more complex than just copying a defect from one system to another. Unless you're using very simple products or you're using them without customizations, you're likely to find that lightweight tools really don't support your use cases without additional coding. And you really don't want the limitations of your integration capability to change how you do your work in those tools. That's just silly. There are lots of great examples for these issues, and it's kind of difficult to shoehorn them into the zombie theme. So I think we've picked a few amusing ones. We'll give it a try. Here's an amusing analogy. The relationships among the artifacts. It's kind of like the relationships our bones have to one another. Artifacts also have relationships. And without those relationships, you just have kind of a pile of unrelated artifacts. A lot of context that's provided by the relationships is lost. If your integration framework isn't able to understand and mirror those relationships, particularly when the relationship schemes differ between systems, then in essence your nicely organized skeleton becomes just a pile of bones. And I think this Halloween example might be a bit of a stretch. Let's see how it looks actually with software development. Like I said, artifacts have relationships. Those relationships provide a lot of the context for the work. Defects are related to tests. You'd be hard-pressed to not give a developer a connection between the defect she's supposed to fix and the test that unearthed it. Those tests are related to requirements that they cover. And the requirements typically have hierarchies, and sometimes really complicated ones. Those are all examples of those artifact relationships. So it's not just about being able to mirror the artifacts, it's also being able to mirror the organization between them too. If your integration framework isn't able to understand and mirror those relationships, particularly when the relationship schemes differ between systems, in essence your nicely organized skeleton, all the nice work that you've put together in organizing your work in those systems, just becomes a pile of bones. So, reality check on lightweight solutions. We've only touched really on the shortcomings of lightweight solutions. I'll be honest, our Halloween analogy was getting a little tough to support it here. But ultimately, what you need to know is that a quick demo might not reveal all of its shortcomings. Integration tools may look similar, but their differences really shine when you're trying to actually configure the integrations. Many tools don't really have enough integration use cases built right in. We touched on artifact relationship, and there are a lot of nuances there, but there are many, many other use cases. And if they're not supported right out of the box, and those use cases arise as you're actually trying to do the deployment, you're going to have difficulties. Now, why do those use cases arise at all? They're really the result of two major things. First, the tools inherently conflict. They weren't designed to interoperate. Second, you've probably customized your tools so they let you do your work the way you want to do your work. That customization can be difficult for some integration tools to accommodate. And when that's the case, you're relegated to moving away from simply configuring integrations to coding around the limitation of your integration tool. Now, all that coding is expensive, not only in the initial development of the extension, but in its ongoing maintenance. And in addition to all that, your tools probably manage a lot of artifacts. Your integration solution has to be able to operate at scale. And if that's not enough, your integration vendor itself has to not only create a great product, but has to be serious enough about what they do to rigorously test its product against live endpoints, not just hypothetical virtualized services. I really could go on, but the bottom line is this. The license cost for lightweight integration solutions may seem inexpensive initially, but their total cost of ownership grows over time and in very, very disappointing ways.
That's right. So I know that you said that it was getting tough to support our Halloween theme, but I found out that there's actually a thing called a zombie project.
I couldn't believe it.
So a zombie project is a project that, for any number of reasons, fails to fulfill its original promise and yet keeps shuffling along, sucking up resources without any real hope of having a meaningful impact on the company's strategy or revenue prospects.
Yep, and that brings us full circle to the beginning of this webinar when we talked about the lack of integration making it difficult for your Agile, DevOps, and Lean transformations to succeed. You know, you and your management may have hopes and dreams about how these transformations might improve the way you design, build, test, and deploy software. But one of the biggest sources of failure of these transformations stems from the schisms among the teams, and that's often exacerbated by the schism between the tools they use. But don't let your lack of tool integration turn your transformation into a zombie project. Okay, so the good news is we're like vampire slayers here at TaskTop. We can get these integrations up and running very quickly without the cost and delay of massive professional services and custom coding that other solutions so often require. We can automate the flow of work from practitioner to practitioner by synchronizing the artifacts across their tools. We can add DevOps tools to the integration landscape so that vulnerabilities detected by your validation tools causes a defect to be created in the defect tracking tool. That's very cool. And because we're a witness to all of the activity across all of these tools, we collect and provide a database full of activity data so that you can create reports and dashboards that span what's going on across the entire life cycle.
So your productivity vampires are slayed, right?
Yeah.
Until these zombies turn back into happy, productive people, and your nightmares can turn into the dream of a fully connected software development lifecycle.
Life is good. That is a little cheesy. I think the whole thing was cheesy, Sarah.
Okay. But if you are interested in maybe some less cheesy stuff from us, you can definitely see how this actually works. No zombies, vampires, or anything like that at tasktop.com/demos. If you have questions for the more serious people among us.
Hey, I'm serious.
Okay, Betty's serious most of the time. I maybe have egged her on a little bit today. But you can also fill out our form, contact us, and someone will get in touch with you. Or email us at info@. So thank you, Betty. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And this concludes our webinar.